It's an honor to, as we stand here on the corner of 18th and Vine, to welcome you all here. It is certainly an honor for me. I'm Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, to take the stage with the new director of the American Jazz Museum, Ms. Cheptoo Buckner. And it's great to welcome her to the district and her leadership here to 18th and Vine. For 25 years, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum has anchored here at historic 18th and Vine. When we started in a tiny one-room office in 1990, today we're proud to be recognized as America's National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And so we've had a vested interest in serving this community for a long time. We've been committed to this community and remain committed to this community. So today is a very, very special day as we look at continuing to transform this great historic district. And so again, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and our team at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, welcome to 18th and Vine.
Thank you, Bob. I am really, really excited to be here at 18th and Vine. I'm only 7 weeks old, but it is very exciting. I think what is happening today is very, very important, not only to 18th and Vine, but to the entire city of Kansas City and the nation. If you think about it, Kansas City is one of the 4 pillars of jazz. You have New York, Chicago, New Orleans, and Kansas City. So the heritage of this community is at 18th and Vine. Jazz is celebrated all over the world. So what we are doing today is to preserve the heritage of this community, to be able to have our children experience what it was like in the 20s and 30s when this was the commerce of our African American culture and businesses. So we need to keep, maintain, preserve, and elevate 18th and Vine. And I want to thank Councilman Reed for his leadership in this. Without him, we wouldn't be here. And of course, Troy Schulte, our city manager. I think I'm going to start calling this the Reed Plan.
Thank you for all coming out today. This is an important day for the city. We've been working on this for a little over 60 days. We got this task in early January, and a little project called the earnings tax renewal got in our way, which distracted us a little bit. But our approach was a little different from the council recommendation. The resolution said, let's figure out a way to, what would $15 to $18 million do for this district? And I took it from a little different approach and said, one of the things that I think the district has always suffered from is we do a project and then we wait 5 or 6 years until we can scrape up enough money to do another project. And as a result, there's been a perception that 18th and Vine has never lived up to expectations. So the conversation I directed staff to, and I think they've done a tremendous job in my city planning and development department, is come up with a comprehensive approach that deals with all of the property in the district, basically between 17th Terrace and 19th Street. And so over the next 3 years, if the council allocates the funds, we would set on a mission to redevelop all the remaining parcels in the district. That total that I'll walk through a little bit later is $27.6 million in needs, but we think it's the last dollars that we would need to get the synergies, to get the redevelopment occurring along this section of 18th Street, as well as do some connection work with the rapidly redeveloping Crossroads area, so that this is all part of one perceived area of the city. There's no reason why the 18th and Vine district can't be defined as just another section of the East Crossroads. And although it's the historic Black Heritage District, it also gives us an opportunity to tie into the broader redevelopment, which will help the surrounding neighborhoods. So I will just quickly, there's a map right here behind Councilman Reed. We'll go into further detail, but each of the sites are kind of outlined for a project, and I'll just quickly point them out, and then we'll answer any questions at the end. I will start over at the corner of 18th and Paseo, the Buck O'Neill Education Center. We are recommending about $4.2 million of resources go into that to make that an ADA accessible facility, and also equip the final 2 floors of the facility, get it completely ready for commercial and office space development. We have found potentially AltCap and the Local Initiative Support Corporation are interested in taking leases in that space, so that would be a fully developed educational center to support the Negro Leagues Museum, That building would be transferred from the Negro Leagues to the city and then leased back to the Negro Leagues as for them to operate and maintain going forward. Directly in front to the north of that Buck O'Neill Education Center is where we're recommending a civic plaza be installed that would potentially have a fountain at some point. Again, one of the symbols of Kansas City as a gateway entrance into the district, and some landscaping that again would encourage people to get off the Paseo and then move into the district, and also as a connection point between this and the crossroads. I mentioned the involvement of the KCATA. They own a large parking lot which has been basically a storage facility for some of their older equipment. They are going to give that to the city, and the city is going to put that into surface parking that will support not only the district but also the Urban Youth Baseball Academy, which just had its groundbreaking yesterday, and which we hope will attract a great deal of tournaments and new visitors into the district. So we're going to have, when events are going on in the district, people quickly notice parking becomes an issue. We will go to, this will open up a large chunk of land at 18th and Lydia for surface parking and allow us to provide more parking down here for downtown, and hopefully in the future either do structured parking as 18th Street continues to redevelop. So the next one is a new entrance and visitors gallery to the Black Archives facility, which is located at roughly 17th Terrace and Woodland. That is a city-controlled facility under the Parks Department where the Black Archives lives, so there'll be some improvements to that facility, creating a welcoming center, a visitor center for that, and truly integrating that operation into the overall mix of activities and venues into the 18th and Vine District. We are also making improvements to the Blue Room, which is right behind me, and to the lobby of the American Jazz Museum. That is over 20 years old and is in need of some improvements, and so we want to modernize and equip the Blue Room so that it becomes the premier venue for jazz in the city, and we think that gives us an opportunity again to showcase some of those improvements. We put dollars in there of about $1.7 million for improvements to the American Jazz Museum, which has been a city-owned facility since about 1997. We are also working with the Friends of Alvin Ailey, who have commercial space. They take some of their commercial and office space in the district, and they're looking for a new headquarters operation that would have a performance venue. And we are looking to either locate them in or around or within the confines of the Boone Theater, which is the lovely building with the fence around it at the corner of 18th and Highland. That is a city-owned facility, and so we're trying to figure out if that could be an adaptive performance venue that Alvin Ailey or other folks might be interested in using that as office space and performance space going forward. It's got a lot of physical structures we're going to have to deal with, but we wanted to start that conversation because it's an important asset to the history of the district and how we reutilize or at least reutilize the facade. One thing I'm particularly excited about is this parking lot here and these buildings right here would be eliminated, and a new first floor retail development is proposed here that would create potentially restaurant space, commercial space, and office space with second and third floor residential above it, stretching from Paseo to Vine. And one of the things that we want to do is incorporate into the design of that structure the historic facades that used to be along 18th and Vine. We lost the Pouncey building a couple of years ago. We had to tear that down before the All-Star game before it fell on somebody. So we want to kind of restore the historic facades along this district, but I'm of the opinion that this particular location at 18th and Vine is the premier address in the city. It's recognized worldwide, so having commercial and office space at 18th and Vine, I think, gives us an opportunity to really create something unique and attractive nationally and internationally. So that is proposed. That will be a public-private partnership project, but it is estimated at about, let me make sure I've got about $5.6 million of projects along this pathway. I mentioned we will be doing some improvements to the 18th and Paseo, the northeast corner, which is right behind you. creating some outdoor seating area. That used to be a restaurant. That restaurant space has struggled. It's, I think, an attractive retail space. So we're going to do some improvements, open up some patio seating to open up onto the Paseo and activate that plaza area that sits right there on the northeast corner. So that's a relatively modest project of about $100,000, but we think will make that retail space that is currently owned by the Jazz District Redevelopment Corporation and is in the process of being transferred to the city that much more attractive as we move forward. So I mentioned the parking lot at 18th and Lydia. I mentioned the stabilization of the historic Boone Theater to try to figure out a path forward that potentially would involve Alvin Ailey or another performing arts venue space. One thing that we're going to spend about a little less than $3.1 million is to create a streetscape project from Woodland. We have a pretty viable streetscape with pedestrian lighting, benches, those types of issues in the district itself, but we want to extend that to the west to connect basically along 18th Street from Campbell over to Woodland, so that again we're maximizing the pedestrian experience as we move people west to east and east to west in this city. So there's about a little less than 3.1 million programmed in that would provide pedestrian lighting and streetscape amenities along 18th Street to once and for all connect 18th and Vine into that broader downtown redevelopment that's occurring around us. So we're excited about that. I mentioned the Gateway Plaza at 18th and Paseo. We will also be doing a redevelopment project moving up Vine Street. We've got some historic structures. Again, there are several of them are on our city's dangerous building demolition list. We want to try to rehab and preserve the facades and incorporate them into some first floor retail and second and third floor residential, again to provide more vibrancy, street level activity, and increase density in the district. So that is a project as well. And then lastly, there is a proposal for about $430,000 behind the American Jazz Museum. We want to redo that outdoor amphitheater that they do the Jazz in the Summer series that the American Jazz Museum sponsors. It will also be a way to tie into the Urban Youth Baseball Academy. They can present venues. It's a performance venue. They can have, so that'll be integrated into the Urban Youth Baseball Academy if the funds are allocated. So what we've tried to do, again, is create a project that's going to take more than our original council resolution, but tries to address all of the vacant property and get 18th and Vine to a point where it can stand on its own and be an anchor for further redevelopment in and around the surrounding neighborhood. So my recommendation, and I gladly hand it off to Councilman Reed and to the City Council, is to say, if we're going to do this, we ought to consider spending up to $27.6 million and doing it right and declaring victory once and for all at 18th and Vine. So
I will make a few announcements so that we have an understanding of a clear path forward over the next 30 days. Before I do that, but I want to just say a little sort of response to what the manager has mentioned about $27 million. That is probably about $9 million of an increase from what we originally requested of $18 million. And I think that is certainly because of the finance department making sure as we stand here today on this very site of 18th and Vine that we are doing everything that we can to sustain the quality of this historic landmark in Kansas City, Missouri. People all over the world know about 18th and Vine, and it's important that we do everything that we can to make sure that we sustain it for certainly generations to come. Nearly 200 feet just yesterday, as mentioned, about the Urban Youth Baseball Academy, we were able to break ground on the $14 million Urban Youth Baseball Academy with Mayor James, Dayton Moore, the city council members, and a number of people from throughout this entire community and even residents. And I think that yesterday certainly marked a huge milestone and nexus for transformation that is occurring here in our area, and we must continue to build on that great legacy. Today, I think that as we move forward, certainly as a community, it is important, and I stress the importance for all of us to work together. It is important that we all work together as we move forward. This is a huge undertaking and one that we must do right. And my motto in life is that you only have one time to do it right, and that's the first time. So, path forward, next 30 days. I want to kind of lay this out so that everyone has a clear understanding of what I think our path forward and what we need to do over the next 30 days. First one is that there will be a series of one-on-one meetings with staff, community stakeholders, and others, in addition to council members, group discussions, and others as well. And so that will be the first order of business. On Monday, the second item, on Monday, May 9th, at 6 o'clock p.m. at Greg Kleist Community Center at the 3rd District Community Building Meeting. We will go through the plans with the community. We will make sure that we are seeking the community's input and reviewing the plans that the manager has put before us, before the entire city council. The third item is that within the next week, we will announce a meeting before the city council, before a joint committee meeting before the city council of plans and zoning and also finance. That is the committee that heard these plans initially, and we'll make sure that this committee has an opportunity to review the plans over the next 30 days, and we will announce that meeting date once we have it set. In addition to that, I would express for the fourth item is that it's important that we are lobbying and making sure that our council members on the city council, including the mayor, are supportive of our plans, and that we are encouraging them to review it and doing everything possible as well to make sure that as we move forward as part of the 3 phases that the manager has outlined, that we are able to start these 3 phases within the next 2 months. And so this is an aggressive plan, and I know that one that we are able to accomplish, but I think it is a plan forward that we will be able to do outside of the 60 days from the report that the manager has done. This is certainly going to be a destination location, and it is one that we're going to continue to be proud of. And I invite all of you to join us on May 6th right here at 3 o'clock for First Fridays. It's at 4 o'clock for First Fridays right here in the district. We are connecting the Crossroads and 18th and Vine, and we're going to be doing a number of things, and I encourage you to come down and join us. At this time, I turn it over to Councilman Lucas for his response.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Reed. Thank you to the city manager, and thank you most of all for all of you coming here today. I'll be short in my remarks before a tornado comes through, because the breeze does pick up. You know, I have the good fortune of a few things. First, I live a block from where we're standing today. Second, I'm elected at large, which means I'm elected citywide. And I've had a good chance over the last 9 months, or however long I've been on the council, to be at a lot of great openings. Openings in the northern part of our city, openings in South Kansas City, downtown, and elsewhere. And in the last few days, we've had a real opportunity to look at progress here in the 18th and Vine Jazz District. Yesterday, the Urban Youth Baseball Academy announcement was nothing short of amazing, looking at the high number of people we will be bringing back to this area. And I think today is another step in that process where we're taking a real value, not just for the 3rd District, not just for people who live on 18th and Vine, but for all of Kansas City and all of the region, to appreciate 2 crown jewel institutions we have in the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the American Jazz Museum. But what's more, looking to our history in Kansas City. This project includes preserving historic buildings, historic structures, and the historic identity of our community. This project includes helping small business be supported in the future of Kansas City. And this project includes, once and for all, as everyone has noted, making sure that we link what's going on downtown, the Crossroads on the west side, with the east side. Not just stopping here, but taking you to Prospect and hopefully all the way as you get out towards Independence here in Kansas City. So what I find is something exciting here. But for those of you who have some question, which is there is an increase in the budget amount, those of us on the city council will spend the next days and weeks looking over what the city manager has proposed to make sure, as always, that we're being fiscally responsible, that we're being responsible with the structures, that we're being responsible with taxpayer dollars. But I think after our review, we'll have a chance to say that what we're doing is vital to making sure that this is not only a successful project, but one that can bring back tourists and visitors, one that can bring back more jobs to this area, more jobs to Kansas City, and one that can be a catalyst for more private development and more private infrastructure in our area. And I hope we all have a chance to come back soon in 10 years, 20 years and say, my goodness, look at what we've done, look at how great these museums look, and look at how great Kansas City is into the future. So I want want to say thank you so much to all of you for being here today. Talk to us, work with us, and hopefully we can say that even more great things are happening at 18th and Vine well into the future. Thank you all very much.
I will note that one of our colleagues from the 5th District, Councilwoman Kennedy, has joined us. And thank you so much for coming and joining us today. We'll entertain any questions. There has been a couple of packets that have been handed out, and there also will be some additional information there out there, but I'll entertain a question. It looks like, Lynn, you're ready to go.
How will you all pay for this? Will you issue
Troy.
bonds?
Yeah, we are recommending, depending on if the council approves it, about $27.6 million in bonds would be sold over the next 3 years. My recommended funding source is, because all of these are public improvements on public property, that we would use the capital improvement sales tax as the funding source. I will let the city council determine how they want to allocate it, whether it's citywide or in district or a combination of those issues. But we think that's the best funding source because all of these improvements will be publicly owned facilities. So that would be my recommendation as we move forward. And obviously that'll be up for consideration as we put the plan together in the next 60 days.
Could all the improvements be done in 3 years?
Under our schedule, yes. That issue will slag depending on how fast we can get private developers on board and whether we like their proposals and some of those issues. But we put enough dollars in the resource that if we don't, we can do it publicly, but we'd like to figure out a way to do public-private partnerships. And there's a lot of interest in this district. There's a project just at 19th and Vine. All that land's been cleared. That's new housing. So there's some new stuff going on. There's a proposal we're working on with the attic school. There's some interesting redevelopment with Parade Park. So there's market activity occurring in this area. We think there's enough chance to jump on and really leverage it and accelerate the conversation.
And one more thing, how does this connect to downtown? I mean, what's the big improvements?
Basically just new pedestrian lighting, new street lights, new curbs and sidewalks all the way along 18th Street from Campbell over to basically Paseo, because this has got a pretty good streetscape, but we want to make sure that there's connecting and ease the perception of the barrier that Bruce R. Watkins did. So we'll put lighting under the Bruce R. Watkins overpass, do something to make it much more pedestrian friendly to move pedestrians and bicyclists as well as vehicle traffic east-west and west-east.
And I will also point out that the manager in his recommendation to us from my brief review does indicate that this is nearly a 43.9% of private dollars that will also be leveraged from the city's initial sort of $27 million. And so, yes, it sounds like there's a lot of financing that's coming from the eligible bonds. However, they have indicated that 43.9% is nearly $12.15 million. Well, it's projected leverage funds. I saw a question over here.
$27 or so million is a lot of money. Do you see this funding standing in the way of funding for other museums in Kansas City, specifically the Kansas City Museum?
Who wants to respond?
No, I think there's within the museum levy that's specifically for the Kansas City Museum, there is capacity in there to do some improvements in that area. So this doesn't proceed to be a crowding out of that issue. It's just a matter of figuring out within the existing museum levy, the current 2-cent museum levy, how much can we fund in capital improvements out of that existing levy. So I think they're complementary projects, but they won't be an issue of crowding out at this point.
Troy?
Bill, go ahead.
One of the things that you mentioned here is establishing some linkage between Crossroads District and space between the two. Have you guys given any thought to how, like on First Fridays, people are supposed to go there for a little while and get the cars and drive? And consider
Well, we've talked about doing some transportation, some transit issues, running some shuttles. The other thing that we've had some good conversations with the ATA about potentially redeveloping some of their land further to the west and putting that back into more commercial and residential. So this is just that, and those numbers aren't reflected in this, but what we think is 18th Street, there's pretty good commercial activity, but there's a couple of blighting spots and some vacant spots that we think we can address systematically as we come to the east. But we think the streetscape project starts to facilitate that conversation about putting the focus on 8th Street and once and for all connecting these two areas. We're really not that far. We're about 4 blocks. that's a walkable distance. We got to figure out a way to just solve the perception issue that this is a long way from what's happening. It's 4 blocks.
Go ahead.
And I'll just say briefly, every First Fridays, we actually do have a number of people that are traversing this stretch, checking things out, seeing what's going on. So as the manager mentions, it's not so dramatic to think that we can actually close that gap, particularly as we infill with properties and investments along the way.
Any additional questions? If not, we want to thank you all. I think Buck O'Neill in heaven is telling us our time is almost up. And so I will say our time is up, and we thank you all so much for coming.